Hello and welcome back to the channel, and today is a new day. I am going back to square one with the bodywork. So running boards are coming off. I'm going to detach the splashers, and my first aim is to get the running boards properly mounted, because I need to close the gap that is basically where the splashers were touching the boiler. I want to get these hard mounted to get me back to square one. So I'm redoing the boiler cladding, and this day here is basically me just getting everything ready to reclad this boiler. And I want to start and get all the bodywork properly mounted. So I'm taking everything apart because I'd put everything together because that's basically where it lives, but it's causing me knock-on problems. And going back to square one, because I need to establish what has gone wrong and where it has gone wrong. So for me, it's a case of let's get the bodywork mounted, find out what alterations I need to make, get these gaps closed up, and yeah, try and get everything screwed down hard. Now I have to tap all these holes out because unfortunately they are painted up. I should have done this prior to putting the boiler on. It would have been so much easier, but yeah, I've got to try and wiggle a 5BA tap in and get all these threads cleaned out so I can put the screws in and get this running board bolted on. I also need to make sure I clear out all the paint from the countersinks so the screws sit fully down. All the running boards will get repainted. Now what we like to do at the Steam Workshop is any horizontal surface gets coated in satin black paint, and all the vertical surfaces and bodywork gets painted in gloss. So all the running boards will be painted. So all the hardware is going in now, and they're going to be painted in situ. So all the hardware gets painted in as well, and gives a nice surface finish. So yeah, my aim is to get these put on for good. So I'm making sure all the hardware is going in properly. And yeah, a little bit of a fiddly task getting all these holes tapped out, but I do get there. As I say, it's just a pain because the boiler's in the way. If the boiler wasn't there, I could go straight down on all these holes and clean them up in a matter of minutes. Instead, it's taken me probably 20 minutes to clean all these holes out, but yeah, lesson learned. At some point, I am probably going to have to take this boiler off as well, because my intention is probably to paint the cladding whilst it's attached to the boiler. That way there's little chance of it getting damaged whilst lifting it. Not overly sure yet, but I will actually be installing the cladding with the boiler off. So yeah, I don't tackle it today, but the boiler's going to have to come off so the cladding can be properly installed. I will do that prior to the first test fit of the cladding when it comes to it. So yeah, it's probably a Monday morning mark task, is taking this boiler off, even though I've got all the plumbing fittings all done up. And yeah, so again, going backwards before going forwards, and one of these days I will get there. But yeah, I don't think I've had a bad day. I, I think my good days to bad day ratio this week is well exhausted. So yeah, I need to make sure, stay positive now, and it's a good positive mental attitude is going to hopefully get me through this project. Always got the added pressure of trying to get this done in a very timely manner to get it to the customer. As I've said in the previous episode, the gentleman is poorly and his family are keen to get this engine back to him. I don't think I need to say too much more there. But yeah, I've got to make progress. Behind me on my whiteboard, there's very little work left on my whiteboard. Basically, put the injectors on is the only thing left on my whiteboard. Oh, sorry, and the boiler cladding. So the boiler cladding and the injector pipe work was pretty much all that was left. These steps here, these are not original. These are clearly fabricated by, I think these are brand new. So these are probably fabricated by the customer to fill in this gap here. They are quite nice looking, but the bracket that holds it to the frame underneath was too long. But it just worked out that I put a little bit of an S-bend into it, and it bolts perfectly on the bottom edge of the frames there. So I'm able to screw these on and just mark my hole behind, because I have to put a hole in the frame for this bracket to be bolted on. And I'm keeping it a nice small fitting. I think I've gone 7BA here, so a nice small fitting, nice small hole through the frame. Really don't like drilling on this historic stuff, but needs must here. So yeah, the previously when that support brace was too long, that was also holding the running board off the side of the frame. So that little S bend there, it allows the frame to sit in snug. So I've got the running board perfectly flat, and then I'm coming back and adding this later component here to enable it to tie it in. So it is buttoning up, getting this bottom end fully resolved, and all the fittings put in. And as I say, this is all going to get painted prior to final assembly. So yeah, the flat surface of the running board is going to get painted in satin black. We are going to make sure we try and preserve all the horizontal, the vertical gloss and all the line work. The line work is beautiful. Don't want to be painting over that. From there, I'm on to applying the back steps. Now these need a little bit of modification. There's 5 holes holding these steps on, and only 2 of them actually line up. So I'm not quite sure what was going on in the history of this, but where they did line up with the holes, I've had to skim a part of the back portion of the step off to make it sit in properly. And then it's a case of all the bodywork's now in place, and I'm wandering around at this moment with Simon, and we're looking at where we go. We're talking about the paint, we're talking about the cladding. I've basically got about 2.5mm of clearance to get this cladding in. So yeah, we're talking and discussing where we're going to go moving forwards, because yeah, we're anxious to get this job done and out the door. But yeah, then I'm just applying this front portion here. This flap here gives you access to the lubricator, and it didn't fit properly. The hinges were expanded, and I've had to grind the edges a little bit to make it fit in, because it didn't actually fit in between the running boards. So the edges have had to be ground just a little bit to make it fit, and the hinges have had to be tightened up and fixed. Then it's on to my boiler lagging. So bit unconventional lagging here. I'm using gasket paper. Now this gasket paper is 1mm thick. I've got some standoffs underneath it, so I'm not doing a double layer of this gasket paper. So I've got 4 1-inch strips along the length of this the barrel to enable me to clad or lag the boiler. And this is my final depth. In between the boiler barrel and the firebox, there's a 2.5mm lip in between the 2 sections, and that is my lowest spot I can go to. And John's popped in for a bit of a shufty. He will be back to work Monday, all being well. But yeah, I'm just explaining what I'm doing. So yeah, that is going to be the new lagging, and hopefully hold me at a decent a decent height off. And I'm just showing him the old, or the cladding, unfortunately, that is going to go. And in his hand there is actually a catalogue from Bassett-Lowke. He's got an original Bassett-Lowke catalogue which shows some of the trains they used to sell, locomotives they used to sell. Unfortunately this locomotive is not in that catalogue, but it gives you a good idea of what is out there. Now that takes care of the lagging. Now I'm going to come on to the cladding. So for the cladding, I'm using 0.9mm thick brass sheet. It's a fraction thinner than the cladding that was supplied with this. I do believe the cladding that came with this is 1.2mm, so 0.9mm is going to be a little bit easier to manipulate. And I'm doing the cladding in one piece front to back. There's going to be no split line between the barrel and the firebox. Ultimately this is going to give a nice flatter, cleaner look to it, and you're also not going to have to try and hide the join behind the rearmost boiler band. The boiler bands are very narrow, so not having that joint to hide makes it a lot easier to apply the cladding. It's just a little bit more fiddly when it comes to manipulating the cladding around the firebox, but that will be covered in another video. Unfortunately, I had my camera on the other side of the workshop zoomed in, I wasn't quite sure of the aim position, and then I decided to move slightly to one side to support the workpiece on both sides across the two tables, and I'm a little bit out of shot. But yeah, using a cut-off wheel and an angle grinder, I'm able to cut around the rectangle that I've scribed out on this sheet. And yeah, I really enjoy using new metal. I really enjoy replacing cladding rather than trying to repurpose and recycle it. I do see cladding as a wear item on a locomotive, so new cladding, it gives you the ability to get a really nice paint finish when it comes to painting it. You're not having to strip paint, you're not having to sand the metal, because there's going to be various alterations made to this as well. So I'm going to be enlarging the hole that goes over the dome, because in the previous cladding the dome hole was a little bit too small, which wasn't allowing it to sit down fully. And as I say, I'm making it in one piece, so that's just adding a little bit more complexity to it, making it a little bit harder to fit, but ultimately it's going to give it a better result. Now here's my layout on the table here. I'm marking out my hole locations, and I'm also marking out my locations for the firebox cutout. So I'm making sure I know where the middle of my sheet is, so I can mark my safety valve hole and my steam dome hole. So there's a steam dome, that's going to be a 100mm round hole. I'll cut that out after it's been rolled, so you don't get any deformation at that hole location. Also the drilled hole for the safety valve will be done once it's rolled as well. And then I'm marking a slot where the firebox is. And when it comes to rolling this, the first inch or 2 inches of that sheet will not be affected by the rollers. So what I'm aiming for is that the start of the roll around the firebox is not going to be a full circle, because I'll get a full circle out the rest of the sheet, but where the firebox is, it'll stay fairly flat because I need to do a reverse roll on that portion, which I'll do manually. So just cutting out these portions here, and as I say, hopefully that first 2 inches of brass will not roll in the rollers, or inch. I'm not quite sure on what the rollers are, because I'm going to have to use the ones at Brighouse. Our rollers only go up to 18 inches or 450mm. This is 710mm long, so it's not going to fit. But Brighouse have got a set, so I will be off to the track at the weekend, where I'm going to be rolling this. Yeah, I'm going to do that probably Sunday, and I'll hopefully share the footage of that. But yeah, just tidying up my edges here. Got a very fine Scotch-Brite wheel on the end of my grinder here, and it's really nice just for softening all the edges. Don't want any sharp edges on the inside there, and just a nice way of cleaning up the edges. So that is now pretty much ready for rolling. Boiler bands, they're about 1 inch too long, so using a set of tin snips, I'm going to chop them all down to exactly the same length. I've measured these around the barrel of the boiler, and I'm actually allowing a gap here. Previously when I had these on, they were nipped up solid and they were still too baggy. So I'm cutting them back, and I'm going to do my best to preserve these, because they're already painted and lined and I don't want to have to redo that bit. I'm hopeless at lining, so what I'm able to do, because the ends are riveted on, I am able to chop the rivets. So I've got them in the vise here, I'm just lobbing them off and rescuing that bracket. Now these have been riveted on a couple of times. There's numerous holes in these brackets, so it's clear that they have been on a different set of bands. So these boiler bands are replacements as well, but because they've been riveted on, it means I can do that again. So I am taking off the old metal, cutting the old rivets out, I'm cleaning them all up, and I'm going to re-rivet them back onto the end of the boiler band. So I've not introduced any heat, so I've not damaged the paint. All I've done is I've cut through with a set of tin snips, rescued the angle, and here I am. I'm just going to drill a hole straight through the brass, and then got a rivet snap that's going to go into my vise. I can load it on, chop off the excess rivet, and then hammer it closed, and then repeat. So there's 2 rivets holding each end on, and that has turned into a very, very easy process. And I do believe I've rescued these. I will have to paint the ends black, probably going to open up the holes in the ends as well, to enable me to get a screw running through. So I'll be basically nut and bolting these, instead of it having one side a through hole and one side threaded, I'm going to probably nut and bolt these, just so I've got better control over the tensioning of them. But there they all are, all fixed, nice one. And that basically brings me to the end of the day, end of the week for me. Yeah, I only work Monday to Thursday, luckily. So just a quick clean up before I bug off home. I will be coming in over the weekend. I've got some work to do on my lister. There's going to be more lister episodes out this weekend, but I'm also going to be in to roll that piece of brass to go around this boiler. So that's a relatively good end to the week. Thank you very much for all your lovely comments on the video so far this week. And yeah, it's going to be more of the same next week, hopefully all good. But as always, thank you very much for watching. Please like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.